In other states, they've had moratoriums where they are not opposed to fracking. They just don't want it to happen until they know what the consequences are and what our best practice is. We seem to have gone headlong into this. Do we really know, for example, I was reading one of the industry web pages where they were saying that, it's a 2-week project to put in a well and then it will generate for 40 or 50 years. And now we're discovering that some of these wells don't have the longevity that a traditional oil well will have. So there's just so much that we don't know. Right. The amount of wealth generated from something running 5 years is a little bit different than 40. If they have equal costs, who's going to get stuck with those costs when the well dries up in 5 years?
Right, right. Yeah, and that is a public resource, right? That becomes a public interest issue. And so, I also think that we need to have some money set aside out of the rainy day fund, which is in effect basically oil and gas receipts that the state receives. I do think that there should be some money set aside for mitigation efforts should we need them down the road. As you mentioned, someone who's in the Barnett Shale today, who's already went into a well and was able to extract what they could extract out of that parcel of land and that shale, they may be in North Dakota in 10 years from now. We don't know in 10 years what some of the impacts may have been or may become. And so I think we need to be prepared. And I think that the Rainy Day Fund is a perfect source to have a resource where if we need to have some type of cleanup activity, we can do it. We have the resources to be able to do that and set that money aside. But, in other cases, I think that, folks are looking at going in and fracking the shale. And then as technology improves, and it's improving on almost a daily basis now, I think folks are figuring out how to go back into that same well and then frack again and get more resources out of it. And so, we don't know what the longevity is of any particular well because the technology may not exist today that can really extract those resources out, and it may be some years later, and then a company may want to come in and do it again.
I guess the catchphrase that some people say is that you have to be wary of industry that wants to privatize profits and socialize costs. So, for example, if there is groundwater contamination because best practices have not been followed or that best practices just haven't been determined yet.
Right.
So inadvertently you had this happen. Who picks up the tab?
It would undoubtedly be the state. If there are any recoverable assets that can be gained out of identifying who is liable for the contamination, I'm sure that the courts will be a resource that folks can use. If not cities, local counties, and local residents that can use to be able to make sure that whoever's liable pays for it. But this is what and I may be naive in this, but my hope is that there are enough good actors in the industry that see the problem with having the industry being branded with such a black eye, because there are some folks who are willing to cut corners, make a profit, and get out of there. That doesn't help the brand of the industry as a whole. And that perhaps there might be some stakeholders in the industry that we can work with, sit down with, and help us to establish those best practices, really raise the bar of expectations, raise the bar in terms of commitment and investment in the communities, and raise the bar in terms of the commitment and investment that we put into the environment as well. And I've been known to be Pollyanna in the past. And so I would not be totally upset or shattered if I learn otherwise. But at first I want to find out who those stakeholders are within the industry that we can sit down and reason together. And I think that it's in their best interest.